How are we going to live in Mexico if we're dead? Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you to review another slam bang. In this case, late 80s, very independent, low budget or lower budget, on the lower budget side. Late 80s, horror movie slasher gem by the name of Scarecrows. Now, I became aware of this movie in 1991. I think there was a video store. I don't know if it was closing at the time or not, but regardless, there was a mom and pop video store that I used to frequent back in the day. And of course, in 91, there were still quite a few mom and pop video stores, in existence. But I may have not, I might have rented this at the time probably and recorded, dubbed it, and then maybe I went back and picked this up when they were closing later. But at any rate, I got this from that video store. And this is the Forum Home Video VHS, release of Scarecrows, which is, I think it's, I want to say this is, it's unrated. So it says this is copyright Manson International, 1988 Forum Home Video, distributed, by Forum Home Video, New York, New York. But this is it. This is the original, I'm assuming first and probably maybe only VHS copy of this movie, Scarecrows. This is the way I originally saw it. Kind of a cool cover. Bam! With the scarecrow there. We got the font with the like grass. Here's a couple of creepy images on the back of the box. I like that tagline, which is kind of just on the back here. Trespassers will be violated. I like that word violated. It kind of means like, what the hell do these scarecrows do? Screw the trespassers? But I don't think that's what happens. If it happens, it doesn't happen on camera. So I'm coming at you to review this very cool, what I would regard as a very cool, independent, horror movie from the late 80s, Scarecrows, which has since come out back in, when the hell did this come out? 2007. It's almost been 10 years already. It has since come out on MGM DVD. And this is the DVD I got back in 07, which is a really fantastic slam bang, I'm assuming high definition transfer. The cover, I'm not, very keen on the cover. I don't know why they can't make covers anymore. And here's the back of the DVD. You got Dad going, "Ah!" and whatever. Yeah, there's a sexy chick there shooting that gun. But, and it should be noted that after this release, I think it was last year or the year before or something like that, Scream Factory rather, the, subsidiary or whatever of Scream Factory, Shout Factory, whatever. But anyway, Scream Factory put this out on Blu-ray, and I'm assuming it's the same, transfer that's on this, DVD, just very much like the Burning Blu-ray they put out as well. I'm assuming it's the same transfer. So this DVD actually looks really, really good on the, my HD TV. So I had been meaning to pick up the, the Blu-ray of Scarecrows. I mean, all it's really got, I think, is like just commentary, which I'd be interested in hearing in just some interviews or whatever. But I just haven't gotten around to, I don't know. I guess I just feel like I don't watch this that often, and the DVD looks fine enough, and the commentary really isn't worth buying the Blu-ray for at this point, so that's why I haven't got it. But anyway, gosh darn, imagine that, I'm actually going to get around to the review. So, obviously back in 91 when I first saw it, I really liked this movie. It was right up my alley. Obviously I was, being a creative kid and stuff like that, I always thought the idea of like a scarecrow, whenever I'd see a scarecrow in a movie or whatever, just, I really wouldn't see him in real life, but when I'd see a scarecrow in a movie or something like that, I'd always think, yeah, it's pretty creepy. And, my little horror movie mind would always be like, boy, what would happen if at night that thing jumped down and, wreaked havoc on the whatever. So this movie kind of does that. This whole movie is about this group of whatever. I don't know if they're military people themselves. Regardless, they're dressed as military people, and they steal like $3 million, $3.5 million from wherever this place is, and they, hijack this plane with this guy and his daughter and his dog too. And the plan is to steal this money and whatever, and turns out while they're in flight, this, this traitor of the bad guys, like, just wants all the money for himself. He, pushes the box of money out the out the plane door with a parachute on it, and he jumps out himself at night, and it's a kind of a cool premise. Obviously this movie, I will say that it does kind of show its limited budget, but the whole movie takes place at night, which is really cool. It's really got this really cool desolate thing about it, and basically the movie's about just the rest of the bad guy robbers trying to search, well, not the whole movie, but the first part of the movie is about the rest of the bad guy robbers searching for this guy, and they, whatever, and, I won't say what happens, but it's basically the robbers searching for the guy and then the money or whatever, and they run afoul of basically this old, cabin slash house in the middle of the woods or whatever with these scarecrows all around, and it turns out these three guys, farmers or whatever, these hicks, rednecks that probably apparently lived in this house slash cabin, whatever the hell this thing is, were probably devil worshipping bastards, and I think they had since basically, I don't know, whatever, turned themselves into maybe undead scarecrows for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the ultimate body modification, trend at the time, I don't know, but they probably turned themselves into immortal, zombie scarecrows. And what's kind of a bummer about this movie is, the scarecrows that you see like on all the, scarecrows are really cool looking with their faces or whatever, but I don't think, then you see one all the time, they keep showing the same scarecrow and it looks like it's breathing. I don't think those are alive. Maybe they're just whatever, basic, maybe they're just devices to see with, or and or do their scary voices, and they're known to in this movie, like, imitate the voices of other characters and even the dog and stuff to trick victims into their, whatever, into the, area to kill them and whatever. So the thing that's kind of disappointing, and I would have done, if I was the filmmaker of this movie, is have, actually show the scarecrows like get down off of the crosses, and then maybe at the end, when everything's when all the victims or whatever dispatched, they could, the movie could end with them like getting back up on the scarecrow crosses. I think that'd be a really cool thing to see. But regardless, it's a bunch of scarecrows hanging on crosses, and you got these apparently three like zombie-ish. The faces look more like just, skeleton, mummified zombie scarecrow things and whatever. So these robbers run afoul of this really creepy, desolated house where these, basically three hick Satanists have turned themselves into scarecrows, and basically once blood is spilt, it kind of turns on, the property, as far as I can gather from this movie. Like the windmill starts going around, the water pump starts pumping water, the generator turns on, and it's kind of like, I think, what I gather from that is like, okay, business is open, or we're open for killing or whatever, and then till all the people are dispatched or whatever, and it kind of closes down at the end. That's kind of what I said like earlier. Would have been cool to see the scarecrows get down off the crosses that when the generator and the water fountain started, and then get back up on the crosses when all that stuff shut down at the end. But Scarecrows is recommended. Like I say, I almost got the Blu-ray a couple times. I mean, I think it's only like $12 or $13 or $11 on Amazon or something. I almost got it, but then I'm just like, I don't watch this very often. Plus the transfer is probably the same. Looks fine on DVD for, so whatever. Oh, one thing that I want to make sure not to forget to mention is for the late 80s, I mean, in being a low-budget movie, they must have spent probably a little more money than normal on the sound, because, even in just listening to it in stereo speakers, the sound design and mix, and I want to also comment on the fantastic music score that was composed by the composer of it, Terry Plumeri or whatever. Music is absolutely perfect, fantastic. But I was commenting on the sound design, and actually the very fantastic use of sound and music in this movie, and even just being in two-channel stereo. The sound design is really fantastic, and the ambient night sounds are really cool, and there's wind sounds in the cabin and stuff like that. And it really, the sound design and the stereo-ness of the movie in the music, they really just stand out to me. It's really like for a lower budget movie, the audio is really top-notch audio work for this movie, I will admit. The gore effects are also like really top-notch, and just like the best you could ever really expect in a movie like this. The movie does kind of, I don't have a problem with it, but some people might have a problem with the movie's more snail-like pace. But to me, it's to me, it's just what the way the movie is. I mean, it's just, I don't think it's like a fault of the movie or some kind of a, you know, it's something that bad or bad movie making, whatever. I just think it's the character of the movie to be this slow meandering kind of whatever pace, you know, it kind of whatever. So the movie does show its like limitations in budget every now and then. Some of the shots or some of the edits are kind of goofy or whatever. It should be noted that this guy who like you know, was a co-writer, co-producer, and director, William Wesley, was also I don't think it's on him back here, but he was also the editor, which I always think is really cool when the director actually steps into the editing chair and actually does the editing themselves. It's more rare, it's more or less rare, but I always think it's really cool when a director cuts his movie. I think that, I always think it's weird that more directors don't cut their movie, because surely they would have more of a, you know, specific idea of what they want to see versus just handing it off to some other guy and making refinements, but whatever. More or less recommended horror movie. What I love about it, and I've said so many in these, so many of reviews of these lower budget movies, is that what I love about this movie is it's got this, you know, it's really, it's because it's lower budget and independent and stuff, it's got this really cool, just like its own little, I don't know, its own little sub genre. Its own little character, its own little fingerprint, and it doesn't feel like just this mass manufactured garbage that comes out of studios, you know, studios and shown in the theaters and stuff. It's got this, you know, very, like I say, it's got its own little fingerprint or own little life force to it, and because it's independent and because it's, you know, a lower budget movie, it's got a really cool, its own little life force. So you know, I definitely regard this as being in its own little sub of subgenres or whatever. I'm gonna go 3 stars out of 4 stars for Scarecrows. I was teetering on 2 3/4 stars and then 3 out of 4, but let's just go with 3 stars out of 4. It's got its faults, and like I say, it's whatevers, and you know, maybe a little slow at times, but you know, it's the director's movie, and seeing as how the director also cut it, obviously it's the way he wanted it or whatever. So I would say it's a relatively, you know, stellar production. I mean, this is coming from someone who's, you know, a really big fan of, you know, independent movies, more or less the like horror. I don't really see too many independent movies that aren't horror. Usually the independent movies I see are mostly just horror and slasher or whatever. I don't think there's really that many independent movies that are really, you know, drama, comedy, action anyway. So I think whatever, but even if there are, I'm more interested in the independent horror than I would be in independent anything else. But anyway, not that I haven't seen independent anything else, but I'm just, you know, being a horror buff, I'm really, you know, obviously keen to check out independent horror and stuff. And at the time being, you know, whatever I was, 14 in 91, I mean, I didn't know so much, you know, about, you know, budgets, and didn't necessarily know that this was a lower budget movie at the time, but whatever. 3 stars out of 4 for Scarecrows. Like I say, it is now out on Blu-ray, so I would probably, you know, obviously if you don't have it and just want to blind buy it, I would recommend it. Just keeping in mind that the pace can get a little slow at times, but what I love about it is when the stuff happens, it's just like, oh, like, just like it happens, and it kind of, that's one thing that I think is kind of cool about the slow pace, because when stuff actually happens, like, you know, everything starts hitting the fan, it's like, whoa, it kind of takes you by surprise, and kind of is more, I think it's more effective when stuff happens, you know, because of the more slow meandering pace. So it's kind of like, whoa, and like I say, when stuff happens, it happens. And this movie, you know, it kind of really ends at the very end on this really, I won't spoil it or say what happens, but it ends on this really cool, just nasty, like, just horrific ending. And I also like, in closing, I also like how, because of the limited budget, they couldn't show them, you know, basically shooting their way out of this, whatever, Camp Pendleton or wherever they're stealing this money from. So what they do is they explain what happened at the beginning during the opening credits with just like a radio news broadcast, and they do the same at the end to explain what happened after the movie ends. As the closing credits are happening, they explain what happened after, you know, the credits started rolling, which is a really cool way to explain what happens without having to, you know, shoot it, because I always thought a remake would be cool of this movie, to actually show them at the beginning, shooting their way out of Camp Pendleton, and all this with a bigger budget, being able to show all that happen. But at the same time, it's kind of cool to just be, it makes the movie shorter, and it makes the experience, it doesn't really need to be seen. The way it's done in this movie is pretty cool. We're just hearing about the the heist from the radio and whatever. It's really cool. So like I say, 3 stars out of 4 for Scarecrows. I remember reading like Fangoria or something back in the day, when there was talk of like a sequel, like William Wesley, I'm assuming, was possibly thinking about a sequel, but I remember the tagline being like Scarecrows 2, The Last Straw, which I thought was a fantastic. I don't know if that's so much a tagline as just a whatever subtitle under the Scarecrows 2 whatever, but I always thought The Last Straw was a really nifty idea. I don't believe that Scarecrows 2 ever happened. If it did, it was so obscure that I never heard of it, but I'm imagining it didn't happen. But at any rate, this is a relatively fantastic effort by these guys, and more or less recommended from a horror, low budget horror movie fan. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.